Hello, and welcome to the very first Conversational Leadership with Jay Mann that's being shot on video. So if you're listening to this podcast in audio and you'd like to see what's going on, feel free to check out our YouTube channel where you'll be able to see us in video as well. So welcome, and my name's Jay Mann. I'm the host of Conversational Leadership with Jay Mann, and I'm the superintendent here in the Creighton School District. And my awesome guest today is our governing board president, Miss Sophia Carrillo. Welcome,
Hi,
Sophia.
thank you so much for having me. I love this.
It's awesome.
This is great.
I didn't realize this was going to work out this way, but I'm so excited that the first time we're doing video, we get to have you as our guest. So
yeah, this
awesome.
is great. And I love that we're moving on to video from just hearing back and forth and listening.
Yep. Yeah, so this should be kind of fun. So we'll need some forgiveness from the folks watching because this is kind of our first time doing video. So like if I do something weird, now you get to know that I do things that are weird while we're doing the podcast. You couldn't see it before, but we're really here to talk today a bit about student outcomes focused governance. This is a journey that we've been on with our governing board led by you and with our leadership team here in the district, kind of working together to try to make differences in our community to improve outcomes for our students. And so could you give us, I know we've done a couple of episodes last year, audio only, of course, about student outcomes focused governance, but we may have some people that are listening that haven't heard those. So you're my resident expert on student outcomes focused governance, or SOFG. Could you give us like a quick overview of what it is?
Yeah, basically the student outcomes focused governance framework is a framework that governing bodies and public school districts adopt to make them more student outcomes focused. It also brings a new lens into what two-way community communication looks like, and not making decisions based off of what the superintendent believes the community wants, what I as a personal elected official wants, or my personal agenda. Right. But it really gets a framework of us going out to the community, finding what the values of that community are. Mm-hmm. Based off of that feedback, we create guardrails that are the values of the community. And then based off of those, we create our governing board goals that are solely academic focused. And this is how we basically bring in on what's important to the community, but also making sure that the institution is serving our students for what it was meant to do, which is making sure that our students are learning and we're giving them the tools to succeed and move on to the next grade level. The student outcomes focused governance framework is also based off of a beautiful Northern Star that A.J. Carrillo himself says, is that student outcomes don't change until adult behavior change. So there's a huge mindset component to this framework that I think is very different than any other framework in governance for governing board members out there, because it really puts on the lens of I can only control what I can do, and how am I showing up to making sure that I'm not being a barrier to the system of my students' learning.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it really, from our experience with it so far, and so we're actually in our third year of our implementation. So, meaning the first 2 years were a lot of building the plane while we were flying it, right? And now we're sort of still working on certain things, and we're still learning, obviously, but we have a deeper understanding. A lot of our systems have improved over the course of the last 2 years. And so we're moving into our third year with this, but we've already seen positive outcomes from the work we've done during our first 2 years. So we know this is the right journey for us. But one of the things I wanted to comment on is what's been so amazingly powerful is it really keeps the governing board focused on the student outcomes and on the academics. And in doing so, it helps to keep the superintendent and the leadership team with their eye on that same prize, right? And so it's really been helping us to align the entire district into focusing on what we need to do in order to ensure that students outcomes are improved and that we're supporting them in a way that they can be very successful. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, and it's in a very collaborative matter, right? This framework has also put on the lens, I believe, for me personally as an elected official and as somebody who's supposed to be overseeing a system on a greater view, not to put blame.
Right.
It's so easy for us to look at data and for us to look at where we're at in the district, and it's easy to say, well, the superintendent isn't doing their job. Well, the teachers aren't doing their job, or the community or the parents aren't doing the support. And this is stuff that usually is going around in different districts. But what this really does is like, no, I was put in a position for a reason. And the main focus is for us to figure out what systems and what's not working in the system and not putting blame, but seeing how we can pivot.
Yep.
One of the most beautiful things about this too is our progress monitoring reports, right? It's something that we didn't have. When I got elected, I didn't have an education background. I don't come from being a teacher or being in the classroom.
Right.
I come from grassroots organizing, and that's what led me to be into this position. So getting into this framework and being able to sit with cabinet and being able to understand what a cut score is, being able to understand what a learning walk is and what a learning target for a teacher is so beautiful, because now I have a better understanding of what is actually happening in the classrooms and overall in the district. So when different things come up to the board at my level where I need to, make a budget decision on a new curriculum or on something else, now I know how that's tied into the teacher aspect or any other aspect of the district to actually help us move the needle for our students.
Yeah, it was pretty powerful a couple of weeks ago when we had a 6.5 hour study session
on a Saturday. And if you guys are more than welcome to go ahead and look at that study session.
Yeah, that's actually up on our YouTube as well. Yeah, and I don't know that I've ever had an experience where the governing board and the school leadership team kind of get together and we learn together and understand the concepts behind not only what our data is, but why we believe the data is that way. And then the more important thing, what are we going to do about it, right? So part of what came out of that session, the board didn't vote on it till the next meeting, but we had a really deep discussion about what recommendations were going to be coming forward for our new interim measures for this year. Because each year we have the goal. We also have, with our guardrails, there's a guardrail. But then also each year we have an annual target that we're trying to reach, something measurable that we're trying to achieve. And for each of those annual targets, we have 3 indicators that we watch during the course of the year, and those are our interim measures. So we actually set 3 different interim measures for each of our 4 goals and for each of our 4 guardrails this year. And so would you share a little bit with us? Because last year we had a mixed number of how many interim measures we had, but this year we've gone to 3 for each of our goals and guardrails. Would you share a little bit about why 3?
Yeah. So one of the things that I love about this framework too is that there's a superintendent evaluation attached to it. There's a board self-evaluation. So it really keeps us on track on not only what we have to do, but also what's expected of our superintendent. And in one of the shifts that we made this year, instead of going from 2 to 3, is because the superintendent's evaluation is attached to how we're meeting those interim measures. Right. It wouldn't make sense for us to have 2, because if you don't make one interim, then that automatically puts you in a space where you're not thriving because it has to be 2/3.
Yep.
So we're looking at many different aspects. And one of these things about this framework is also that what's expected out of you, out of the principals and the teachers, it automatically is expected at the top level, which is us as the governing body entities of the school district. So we've had a lot of changes. And of course, within these 3 years, we've been learning, but every time we're refining and retuning. And that's what framework is about. It's a continuous improvement of a framework where we're consistently looking at what's happening, pivoting, changing, and all of our evaluations at the end of the day from the top to the bottom are going to be attached to those interims, to that annual target, because the annual target will be the predictive measure of our full 5-year goal that we have set for the district.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm glad you said continuous improvement framework, because when we look at, that's another additional benefit of having the 3 interim measures is, and you talked about pivoting earlier. So by having 3, it also gives us different looks at different aspects of things that are correlated to us meeting those annual targets. And by having 3, it kind of helps us triangulate. Like if something's not headed the right direction and we're off track, we have a little bit more data to be able to figure out what does that pivot need to be, not at the end of the year when things are over, but as we're moving our way through the year. So you mentioned the progress monitoring reports earlier. For each of our goals, we do those quarterly. So quarterly, that gives us a chance to take a look at the data, take a look at all 3 of those interim measures and be able to figure out, are we on track or off track, and what do we need to do to pivot, and then have a discussion with the board, right? So we do that in a board meeting.
On non-judgmental discussion, just looking at data and figuring out what needs to be done to ensure that our students are succeeding. And one of the things about this framework is before this framework got on, like you mentioned, we would get data at the end of the year.
Right.
And then we would have this big ol' 200 whatever page report on data basically saying, hey, we didn't meet our targets, we're below average. Okay, we'll see you guys next year.
Right.
And that's literally how our data looked. And for me, like I said, since I'm not from education, that did not make sense to me. And the way that this whole framework has been put is kind of like a basketball game, right? There's one goal in basketball or football or whatever is to win the championship, right? And you have 4 quarters in one game to get to the championship. Every quarter, guess what the players are doing with their coach is that they're looking at the game's strategies. This is not working. We're going to pivot. So in second quarter, we have a better outcome. It didn't make sense to me that we weren't doing that with our data.
Right.
Why are we waiting until the end to see if our kids are succeeding or not? Why are we not quarterly or whatever that looks like, having these conversations and seeing what their biggest gaps that we have and how are we as a governing body entity and cabinet working together to close those gaps?
Yeah, no, it's really powerful because, I mean, imagine for just a moment that like you're, our local basketball team, the Phoenix Suns, and you just keep throwing balls at the basket till the end of the game and then go, let's see what happened. Then you look up at the scoreboard and you're like, oh, what a shame, we lost. Well, we don't know what we did wrong. We don't know what we could have changed because we just weren't paying attention along the way. And, that kind of feels like that old saying, the definition of insanity is just to keep doing the same thing over and over again and then wonder why you keep getting the same results, right? So this way we're actually digging in and figuring out like what can we do differently to improve things. So,
and one of the biggest supports has been having a coach, right? This framework literally suggests you need to have a coach who's already been certified and trained in this to help you get to those levels. And it's the same as a basketball team and players. They consistently have a coach that's teaching them and helping them gain new strategies when something's not working. And we took the courage as a governing body entity to say, you know what, we're going to take this on, regardless of some of the backlash that we've gotten, because that's something that's important for people to realize that this is not an easy journey.
Right.
It's something that we decided as a board to move forward with, along with collaboration with our cabinet team. And it's been, like I said, continuous and always improving. And we've seen some gains.
We absolutely have. And, what's interesting about it is not only have we seen gains specific to the goals that we've set. So year 1, we hit an annual target for 1 goal. And we're kind of late in the game to even get up and running because we were still establishing like how this process was going to work. In year two, we hit 2 of our annual targets. Really excited about year 3. I think we're going to do even more amazing things. We've been successful with a number of our guardrails, the measures that we were watching for those as well. And so all of that's great. But sometimes some of the pushback we've gotten is, well, this seems very specific to these 4 goals. But it's really more of like a test, right? Like it's what you're watching to see if the whole system's improving. Correct. But you're using these specific indicators. So the other thing that's been very powerful is we have seen the performance of some of our schools increase significantly. And then if you want to look at it from, I don't want to call it a deficit mentality, but if you want to look at it from areas where maybe we were struggling in the past, we've also seen some improvements in some areas where some of our school sites were in school improvement for some of their subpopulations. And we've seen, like, over the course of 3 years, I mean, it's been an insane reduction in how many of our schools are in that improvement and the number of subgroups that they're in it for. So we're seeing movement sort of from where we're struggling the most. We're seeing things come up. From where we're performing well, we're seeing things continue to improve. And then we're also monitoring and watching for each of those goals and guardrails. So it's system-wide improvement, even though we're specifically measuring 4 goals and 4 guardrails. So let's dig a little bit into those new interim measures for this year. So for those of you that are tuning in, we're not going to go through every goal, every guardrail, all the interim measures, that we'd be here for probably 3 hours just kind of walking through
You can watch
them.
the board meetings if
Right.
that's what you're interested
true.
in.
Yeah, we'll go into each one in depth in the progress monitoring reports. But I want to kind of drill into a few of them, but I want people that are watching to know that attached to this podcast, we will actually have the full list of all the goals and guardrails. So that way you can take a look at those. We'll have all the interim measures posted. And in addition to that, we'll make sure that we include a link to where you can find the videos for our governing board meetings in case you wanted to take a look at the progress monitoring reports, which is part of the process as well. So I think what we'll do is we'll dig in on one of the new interim measures for one of our goals, and then there's an interim measure for one of our guardrails that I'd really like to see us dig in on a bit today. But why don't we start with our first goal is the percent of 8th grade students who score minimally proficient on the AASA math exam will decrease from 73% in August of 2023 to 48% in August of 2028. So this is a goal the board was particularly interested in because our community said we want our kids to be successful in high school, and we looked at data as a team and discovered we're really not making sure our kids are better than minimally proficient well enough as they leave us in 8th grade and go into high school, and that reduces the number of opportunities that exist for them at the high school level. And so for this year, we've created 3 different interim measures, but one of the ones that's really kind of new for us is that we're digging in not only on our 8th grade students and how they're performing over the course of the year, but we're also looking at our 6th grade students. So I'll give a 6th grade example really quick, and then what I'm hoping you could maybe help people that are watching understand is like, well, if 8th grade's what we're measuring, why are we looking at 6th grade? So one of the 6th grade interim measures is the percentage of 6th grade students who score high risk on something called FastBridge A-Math. So this is a screener we give for mathematics to see how our kids are doing. Will decrease from 50% in May of 2025. So our students scored at 50% for this last May, to 40% in May of 2026, this upcoming May. So we're looking to create a 10% improvement in that from last year to this year. But it's 6th grade, not 8th grade. So why are we looking at 6th grade, Sophia?
So there's many reasons why we look at 6th grade too. One of the reasons that we do have that is that we have 5-year goals, right, and our 6th graders eventually will be in the cohort when they hit 8th grade into that, right? And one of the things that when we first started getting our goals, one of the I could say feedback that we were getting concerns from our community is, why are you just focusing on 8th graders? Right. You can't just focus on 8th grade. Why not start at kindergarten or 2nd or 3rd? But this is what interim measures are built for, right? 6th grade is also the fundamentals of some of the algebra, some of that stuff that comes in for 7th and 8th grade. And it's very different than 5th. And we have middle school cohorts that we have created in our school districts. So 6th grade is really going to be the indicator of what's going to happen next, especially if we're focusing on those 8th graders. Yep. So that's why I love interim measures too, because although we are focusing on the 8th graders right now, there's some steps that we have to take beforehand to make sure that we're catching on to those things so that by the time they hit 8th grade, they're more successful to pass that 8th grade AASA math test.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's that's really powerful stuff. And I think, the fact, like if we just waited till 8th grade, it would be like the example you gave earlier. If we had just waited till the end of the game to check the score, right? So we're checking on them. You talked about a championship. So we're not just looking at the single game, we're looking at the season, and the season for our ultimate goal achievement is going to end in 2028. And like you said, these 6th graders will be our 2028 8th graders. So we're kind of watching them as we go.
And that's part of what this framework does. It's a lot of strategy behind it. And this is a strategic thing to think about. If you think about businesses and when they set out their goals and their metrics, they're not just thinking about the year right now. They're looking at the future. They're predicting from the back on how that's going to work. So in education, data works that way too. Just because we're in education doesn't mean that data kind of is data. Yep. It works the same here that it would in the business world or in the law firm world, legal world. And this is what this framework does. It brings us strategies to get to the end game, but also be looking at what preventative measures that we can take so the same mistakes are not being made and those barriers are broken down for the students to fully succeed.
Yeah, no, that's very, very well stated. So we kind of looked at one of our goals and one of the interim measures for our goals and sort of why that's structured that way. Let's take a look at one of our guardrails. So guardrail 1 for us is that the superintendent will not neglect student social emotional health, wellness, and development. And last year we had 2 very specific interim measures for this. This year we have 3 interim measures, but one of them is very different from the ones we've had in the past. And I think it's something that not only have we been talking about a lot in our district, but also on a national level, there's been a lot of conversation around this. And so interim measure 1.1 reads, the percentage of average daily attendance for the Creighton School District will increase from 79% in May of 2025 to 82% in May of 2026. Okay, so why attendance? Like, why would that be a guardrail? Why would it be a guardrail related to student social emotional health, wellness, and development? And why is it something important for us as a school district that's trying to achieve these goals?
Yeah, one of my favorite things about guardrails is that that's where really the values of our community lay in, right? That's where the community as a whole has said, hey, this is what's important to us. This community in Creighton said that the social emotional learning of their students and their kids was a highly priority. Yes, we want our kids to learn, but guess what? We want our kids to show up and feel safe. This chronic absenteeism interim is a beautiful new thing that we're doing because we're really focusing on, okay, we're being strategic here. We want our kids to meet this academic needs, but if they're not in class learning and showing up, how are we ensuring that we're going to meet that goal? Right. And not only does that bring that lens, but it also brings the lens, okay, well, if our kids are not showing up, what root causes do we have that's not getting in them the classroom? And that's where the magic starts beginning. We can't say right now what that is, but because we're having these conversations, and today is a perfect example that we started this conversation with our Kids Congress first, and we had students in the classroom give us their point of view on what this meant to them and why they felt that their peers were not coming to class or why they felt that there was tardiness. And it was beautiful to hear the students from their perspective say what they thought was going on and how themselves, as the genesis of change of their district, can do themselves to make sure that they're filling those gaps, whether it's having a conversation with their friends, whether it's making teachers aware that maybe they should be checking in on their students a little bit more or making them feel more welcome versus it being an expectation. And this is where the magic sauce happens, right? It's because we're not only empowering our students, but we're also going to start empowering our families to really get to what is the need that we're missing and how can we add on support systems to make sure that our kids are here on time and also so they can be ready to learn and meet these academic goals that are also important to our community.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful. So, like the whole premise of the reason we kind of kicked off this podcast was because we really wanted to talk about conversational leadership and how important conversation is to leadership. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, you brought it right home with, we went straight to the source, right?
Yes,
and
the students.
We're having conversation with our students. Yeah. And then I think we're queued up next week to have a conversation with some of our parents at our community council meeting that's coming up. So, sometimes I think when you don't have specific measures that you're looking at, you lose track and direction, mm-hmm. and you forget to have these important conversations. And now, because we're really like digging in, drilling down, and looking at these things, it's putting us in a position to start to ask questions. And then it's important we ask the right people, which is our students, our parents, our community. And so that's kind of how we're digging in on it.
Yeah. And I'm going to keep referring back to the framework, because mm-hmm. without the framework, we would not be doing this. I feel a lot of the times in education spaces, there's assumptions of what maybe our community wants. There's assumptions of maybe the need of the student. Mm-hmm. There's assumptions of what the superintendent or cabinet team will need. But right. a lot of that keeps going on based off of our lived experiences or perceptions. And these mm-hmm. conversations are the ones that are not happening and getting right. to the root cause issues, because there is no main focus. Yeah. So because we created this guardrail, it was your job mm-hmm. to figure out, okay, I have this guardrail, I have this value. How am I going to tie this in to goal 1, mm-hmm. 2, 3, and 4? And obviously a big missing link is, hey, if our kids are not showing up, then maybe we're not going to meet these interim measures or this overall goal at the end of 5 years. Right. So that's the beauty of this too, is that we set the tone as a governing board entity, mm-hmm. as your employer. We set those expectations, and then we hired an expert. Mm-hmm. And this is where the guardrails and the interims come based off of your expertise and the cabinet's expertise. And this is one of the things I'm really excited for, to keep looking into and figuring out how now this guardrail is going to be a predictive measure of some of our interim measures and annual target goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was one of the things I think I'm excited about a lot of things for this year, but I think digging in on this is so powerful. It's really going to help us a lot. And it's going to help us get to the root causes of many other things. And it was so important what you said earlier about staying away from blame and shame and looking at like, what is the problem we're dealing with, and focusing in on that and finding the solutions and doing that together as a team is really amazing. So
yeah, I think the only expectation right now is like, hey, this is the situation we have in front of us. How are we going to work together to get it there? And if we can't work together, then that's okay. This framework is not for everybody.
Right.
This framework isn't for, it's for those who really want to get down and do the work. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're doing here in Creighton. And we've already seen some beautiful things come out of it. So I cannot wait to continue doing this and seeing where our kids start evolving because of this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and walking through this with us. To those that are watching, again, we'll have resources that are posted and linked to this podcast, and please come back and join us again. We'll be moving on not only to other topics, but we'll probably be checking back in with you not only on our student outcomes focused governance, but also the data-wise process that we use in order to ensure that we're utilizing the data in the way that allows us to get to the problems of practice and make improvements based on identifying those problems of practice.
Yeah, and then you guys can go on YouTube, watch our board meetings. On Tuesdays, we have our governing board meetings. You can look us up on the Creighton School District website and see where our meetings, everything is public. But also, we're going to be the governing board's going to be kicking off their two-way communication. Yes. So we're going to be going into depth more on where the goal is, what the guardrails are, what the interim measure is, and we're going to be actually presenting some of our progress monitoring reports based on different things that we have. So be on the lookout for that information so you guys can come and hear more and ask us all the questions. I appreciate this time.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you very much.